Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Duchen. This is my study, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the episode 15 of Ghost Variations, which is this. In yesterday's episode, Yeli found herself at a party at Baron Palmstiana's, at which she's been desperate to escape a discussion about eugenics that's taking place upstairs. So now we go with her downstairs. The other women quickly dispersed to find their partners or new partners. She, for the moment, lingered on the landing. Watching the dancing, she had the odd sensation of looking back at a world that might at any moment slip through her fingers, like the bureau key. In front of her passed her sister and the Baron, perfectly in step. Adila's arm relaxed across Eric's. They seemed able to maintain a conversation and dance in serenity at the same time. As the quick step ended, the Baron and his psychic sensitive embraced at what seemed to Yeli inordinate length. "Yeli," Eric called out to her, one arm still around Adila. "Please, may I have the pleasure of the tango?" Yeli's tango was legendary. Adila let him go, laughing, and crossed the room to join Alec, who was waiting a safe distance away in conversation with Lord Chiltington. Eric's touch on her back was firm, yet his hand slightly too warm, his demeanour a little too intent, his laugh never as ready as those of her favourite easy-going, high-spirited dancing partners, Sepp and Tom. Yeli concentrated on the music. The band's pianist was playing with his eyes half closed, an old tune that pulled Yeli back into her memories. The Rue du Seine, the apartment, Tom's bright gaze, and laughter all around all night long, and back then if her feet hurt she was happy because it meant she was loving her life. Now her joints seemed to have been stabbed with needles, and each step took concentration so as not to betray the problem. Nothing had felt quite right since her bout of exhaustion after the cathedral tour. If this went on, she would have to see a doctor, which she dreaded lest it should turn out that the pain would not disappear of its own accord. "Yeli, don't worry so," Eric said, holding her. "Everything will be all right sooner or later." She still could not relax. Why did he and Adila take off for those Sunday drives? Adila loved Alec. Anyone could see that. Didn't she worry about upsetting him? Adila was so open, so transparent, that Yeli was certain she couldn't have hidden it if she were really having an affair. Perhaps this was all her own anxiety, when in fact it was none of her business. Even so, Eric had found the Schumann concerto, her Schumann concerto. Was she to be indebted to him forever? "Thank you, Yeli." "Thank you, Eric." The pianist slowly opened his eyes, as if sliding back from an astral voyage to the seedier districts of Buenos Aires. He sported a bushy moustache and round spectacles. He wouldn't have been out of place as a maths professor, or perhaps a cartographer. She wondered of what or who he had been dreaming. For a minute she felt that part of her matched his spirit, time-travelling in parallel. As the band began Sophisticated Lady, his gaze met hers for an instant. She couldn't tell whether he recognised her. Musicians often did, if less frequently now than 10 years ago. When they took a break from dancing, the Baron himself brought in beer for the band, and Yeli went up to the pianist to tell him how much she was enjoying his playing. He answered with a strong German accent. His English wasn't good, but good enough, and she drew him easily into conversation. He was Jewish, from Charlottenburg, west of the Berlin city centre, he said. There, the harassment started with a beautiful rocking horse, a present from his mother to his 3 children. The Nazi thugs raided their flat and took it away, along with anything they could find of value, sentimental as much as financial. His wife had a fur coat which he had given her after saving for months for it. They took that too. His children were picked on in school, first moved to the back of the class, then shunted to a different classroom, then expelled because a tiny quota had been brought in for Jewish pupils, which the school exceeded. And it went on, step by malicious step, Low-level sadism, then more, then worse, whittling away at their life and livelihood, chip by chip. Where are they now, your wife and children? At home still. I came first to look for somewhere to live and some work. God willing, they join me. When? As soon as I can give them a life. I am living in one room in a hostel and it's no good for children. I am here 3 months. And are they all right? My wife writes to me saying, yes, they are fine, but you know, post can be intercepted and censored, so I do not know if she tells me the truth. You heard they have been burning books by Jewish authors? Yeli felt a sort of chilling from fingertips to ribcage. Surely not, she pleaded. I'm sorry, said the pianist, as if it were his fault, but it's true. In general, few people want to hear the truth. And really, nobody outside is interested. They think it has nothing to do with them. It's just a problem for the Jews of Germany. How will you get them out? I don't know. I must find a job, perhaps playing in a hotel or restaurant, then send some money. I trust in God we will find a way. The musician's eyes had a depth that reminded Yeli of Myra, her closest Jewish friend. She asked his name. He gave a slight stiff bow. Bernhard Rabinovich, Mr. Anyi. Ah, you've unmasked me. Madame, I have played all the piano works of Ravel and many of Bartók, and I would know you anywhere. Yeli, do come and join us. Margareta was beside her, in a bedazzlement of blonde curls and peach silk. I still haven't seen you properly, and I need you to tell me everything. Margareta adored Yeli, as young people often did. She was one of them, in all but actual years. And Yeli saw Bernhardt's eyes linger on the girl's slender figure, her regular wide-set features and golden Scandinavian skin, an ideal Aryan blonde as ever must have been at her age. His expression was infinitely sad. Yeli wondered if or when he might see his family again. She excused herself and wandered away with Margareta, asking her about her small children. A portion of her mind stayed with the refugee musician. It wasn't long before Eric appeared beside them with a gentle cough. Papa! Margareta gave him a kiss, Eric returning it lit up with pride and love. Yeli tried to deflect a brief stab of longing that her own severe-natured father might ever have taken such pride in her. Yeli, I have to tell you something. It was too noisy earlier. He drew her by the elbow into the hallway. Listen, we have been talking again to Schumann. This man had held the missing manuscript in his hands, yet he couldn't sing her one melody from it. Yeli waited. He begs us to tell you not to forget, so we absolutely must write to Eugenie Schumann. If anyone can have it released to us, it is the composer's own daughter. She lives in Interlaken in Switzerland, and I have her address, but Yeli, the letter must come from you. You are the musician. You are the one she will respect. I know it's been a difficult and hectic summer for you, but now we know where the manuscript is, it's time to try. She must be very elderly now. Isn't there someone who can be a go-between? Does she have children or a husband? Neither. The Baron smiled into his moustache. She is a lady who prefers to stay with her own kind. How do you mean? Eric whispered in Yeli's ear. Eugenie Schumann is a daughter of Lesbos. Yeli tried not to shriek aloud in delight. This was, after all, the daughter of Robert Schumann himself and the eminent Clara, a woman who had been dandled as a toddler on the knee of the youthful Brahms. She loved to hear about individuals who went their own way, regardless of convention or censure. People like Ethel Smythe, the composer who was once jailed for throwing a rock through the window of a patronising cabinet minister, and who had written her a concerto for violin and French horn just 5 years ago. In that case, she declared, I will write to her tomorrow. Schumann's daughter. Yeli wished she could summon the important-sounding tone of a diplomat like Eric, or wise academic like Tovey. After she had used up 10 sheets of paper scrawling words that she suspected were illegible, she asked Alec for help. The letter was finished within an hour. What disturbed her was that Eric seemed to be annexing the concerto, making it his project rather than hers, when the spirits, if spirits they were, had asked specifically for her attention. That a London-based musician with a Jewish heritage should be selected to recover this concerto from Nazi Berlin seemed irrational at best on the spirit's part, and ridiculous at worst. Still, the idea that Eric could not even read the notes on the page infuriated her, revolving in her head like a gramophone record trapped under an insistent needle. "Shy, he wants to help you," Adela insisted. "People do want to help, you know. They are not all such bad souls as you seem to think." "I don't think he's a bad soul. I just wonder what he stands to gain." "Proof," said Adela, "about the spirits. It validates everything we have been working for." That, Yeli reflected, was exactly what worried her. No matter how convinced Adela might be, few outsiders could believe in such a thing unless they saw it for themselves, and even then it would be hard to accept. Were Adela and Eric not setting themselves up for a serious dose of disappointment? Her concerto, or Schumann's, was only a small concern for the Baron within a much larger quest. There was one concerto-hunting avenue that she could pursue alone, her cousin, Elizabeth Joachim, in Oxford. But by the time Yeli finally telephoned her to ask if she might visit, she had received a reply from Switzerland, its contents far indeed from what she had hoped. Elizabeth, Uncle Jo's daughter, had settled in Oxford with her husband Harold Joachim, who was also her cousin. He, a philosopher, had spent most of his career at the university, where he had now been Wykeham Professor of Logic at Merton College for some 14 years. To visit them was not only easy but a joy. It gave Yeli the perfect excuse to wander again through Balliol, imagining Tovey strolling by with Sepp and Tom. She loved to picture how life might have been if she had studied at Oxford herself, immersed in writing, discussing and arguing, playing her violin only for fun. If she had had the right education to attend St. Hilda's College for Ladies, perhaps she could have read greats, the Greek literature and philosophy she loved, though, of course, her handwriting was so awful that they would probably never have let her in. And in those days, when she was young enough to be a student, they would not have given her a degree, whatever her handwriting was like, since she was a girl. What nonsense! The same work, the same achievement, yet no recognition or reward if you happen to be female. Oxford had only agreed to confer degrees on its women students in 1920, when it seemed the natural step following the introduction of voting rights for women over 30 who met a property qualification. Cambridge took great pride in not following suit. The new term had just begun, and the freshers were easy to spot, timid and goggle-eyed, clutching books, tethering bicycles, so desperately young. Thinking of her male friends who had been just like these boys at one time, Sepp dead at the Somme, George Mallory lost beyond the clouds on Everest, and Tom sick and fading in Ireland, and Aldous Huxley working on his latest book in Italy, one that he hoped might cause a bit of a splash. Yeli stared at the boys with their short back and sides, their blazers, spectacles and tweeds, and wondered what would become of them all. Please join us tomorrow for Yeli's meeting with her cousin Elizabeth Joachim. Thank you. Bye-bye.